This is their final secret. Data integrity has been manipulated, and thousands of rare disease patients will pay with their lives. Sophia Grant's voice rang out like a furious whisper in the musty room of the community center, making Alexander Hayes, millionaire CEO, freeze on the spot, his heart pounding erratically as he realized the janitor who cleaned his office every night was revealing a terrible truth that could topple the entire Apex Pharmaceuticals empire he had built from scratch. Before we begin, let us know where you're listening to this story from. Seattle, New York, or somewhere else in the world. And when we're done, don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10. Let's start. The Seattle rain drummed incessantly on the rusty tin roof of Rainier Valley Center, a chaotic symphony blending with Alexander Hayes's ragged breaths. He pressed himself against the damp concrete wall, his luxury leather coat now soaked through, his hand gripping his phone as if it were his only weapon in this chase. Just a few hours ago, in the luxurious office of Apex Pharmaceuticals, where he was the 45-year-old millionaire CEO, outfitted in a perfectly tailored suit with a multi-million-dollar investment portfolio, Alexander had watched the security footage over and over again. The blurry recording showed Sophia Grant, a 38-year-old single-mother janitor in a pale blue uniform and with a humble demeanor, pausing unusually in the executive office area after hours. She was cleaning a desk when an abandoned laptop flickered to life, its screen displaying pharmaceutical formulation data for rare diseases. Sophia froze, her eyes glued to the screen, her hand motionless on the cleaning rag, as if hypnotized by the flashing numbers. What did she see? Alexander wondered, anger surging through him like the roaring Columbia River. With a new product about to launch, a breakthrough drug for lysosomal storage disease that could save thousands of lives, but also bring in billions of dollars. He couldn't afford to take any risks. Competitors were lurking, and if Sophia leaked this sensitive data, Apex stock could collapse, bringing down the very empire he had given his youth to build. Alexander trailed Sophia from the company parking garage, his polished black sedan following her beat-up Honda through Seattle's shadowy streets. He expected her to pull into a shady bar or meet some stranger in the industrial district, plain signs of industrial espionage. But instead, her car stopped in front of Rainier Valley Center, an old building with a faded sign supporting immigrant communities and low-income families. Alexander parked a block away, killed his headlights, and slipped after her into the pouring rain. The cold seeped through his skin, his leather shoes clicking softly on the wet pavement. But he didn't stop. Through a foggy glass door, he watched Sophia bring in a bag of old equipment, test tubes, a small centrifuge, and an outdated laptop. The same kind of surplus gear from Apex he had once signed off to discard. Inside, the air was warm, a sharp contrast to the rain outside. The scent of cheap Seattle coffee mingled with the tang of medical disinfectant. Sophia moved smoothly between makeshift lab tables cobbled together from old wood desks and rusted metal shelves. She quickly set up, her hands deftly connecting wires, checking dosages in test tubes under the flickering neon light. A group of patients started to gather, mostly immigrants with faces weary from illness and poverty. Some children with the pallor of rare diseases, their eyes brightening as they saw her. Today, we'll learn how to check dosage data for cheap generic drugs, Sophia said, her voice warm but firm, like a true professor instead of a mere cleaning lady. Alexander pressed closer, his breath heavy, hand trembling as it touched the icy door frame, struggling to contain his rising shock. A boy of about 10, with big eyes and a frail body worn down by lysosomal storage disease, approached Sophia. Alexander recognized him, Ethan, her son, from glimpses in the employee records. Ethan gripped his mother's hand, his childish voice full of hope. "Mom, can I try mixing my own medicine today? I feel stronger now." Sophia knelt down, smoothing his hair, a lingering silence as she gazed into his eyes, as if cradling a hidden pain. "Of course, sweetheart. But you need to be careful. One small mistake can change everything." She guided him through each step, her hands steady, yet Alexander noticed a slight tremor in her fingers, the mark of fatigue from night shifts and single parenthood. To lighten the mood, after Ethan spoke about a midnight pain attack, Sophia smiled and joked with the group. "Mixing this medicine is like making Seattle coffee. It has to be precise so it's not bitter. But sometimes, a little sweetness from hope makes all the difference." Everyone laughed, their chuckles echoing through the cramped room, chasing away some of the heavy atmosphere. Alexander, despite his shock, suddenly felt his heart soften. This woman was no thief, but was using deep pharmaceutical knowledge, understanding of data integrity and generic formulations to help people abandoned by society. He stepped back, the rain outside seeming louder now, nearly drowning out his erratic heartbeat. But then, Sophia's voice rang out even clearer, filled with outrage as she told an older patient, "This is their final secret. Data integrity manipulated, and thousands of rare disease patients will pay with their lives. We can't wait any longer. I've applied for grants from programs like NORD to research affordable generics, and we'll save ourselves." Alexander froze, his breathing heavier than ever. How could a janitor know about off-label promotion and data manipulation, the issues he had faced in boardrooms? And why would she risk everything here, in this endless Seattle rain, with her rare disease-stricken son beside her? He turned away, stepping out into the night, the wooden floor creaking underfoot, his mind spinning. Sophia wasn't the enemy. She might be the key to a darker truth, a secret that could forever change Alexander's multi-million-dollar empire, and maybe even his own life. But what was this woman really hiding? And would her secret lead Alexander on a journey he could never have imagined? Alexander pushed open the sedan door, the Seattle rain lashing his face like icy needles. But he didn't stop, striding quickly across the dark street back to Rainier Valley Center. The secret of Sophia, the woman he once suspected of data theft, was calling to him, and he needed to know more. The old wooden floorboards creaked beneath his feet as he slipped into a side hallway, his heavy breathing blending with the faint smell of disinfectant from the makeshift lab. Through the crack of the door, he saw Sophia still guiding a group of patients, her hands deftly adjusting a small centrifuge, her voice calm yet commanding. "Now, let's double-check the dosage data once more. One little mistake and it can all go wrong, especially with generics for rare diseases like lysosomal storage." A middle-aged woman with pale skin and tired eyes nodded appreciatively, her shaky hand jotting notes into a worn notebook. Alexander pressed himself against the wall, hand gripping the doorframe, feeling the cold metal biting through his skin. He couldn't take his eyes off Sophia, a 38-year-old janitor in a pale blue uniform now transformed into a true scientist, moving smoothly between lab benches. Her son Ethan, a 10-year-old boy with a frail body from a rare disease, sat nearby, carefully dropping medicine into a test tube under his mother's guidance. "Mom, I think this dosage is okay now," Ethan whispered, his young voice full of hope. And Sophia gently stroked his back, pausing briefly to look at him, as if embracing a silent pain of her own. Alexander involuntarily thought of his own daughter, Mia, 12 years old, at home with the nanny. She too had spent long, lonely nights while he was busy with Apex, building a pharmaceutical empire from initial research for rare disease drugs. Suddenly, a young patient, a teenager with thick glasses and a shy smile, asked Sophia about the generic formula she was sharing. "Miss, how do you know so much about data integrity? I read online that big companies often hide errors to keep prices high." Sophia paused, her breath heavier, gripping the test tube as if to contain her anger. That's why we're here, she replied, her voice low but resolute. I've seen those mistakes. Off-label promotion costing patients their lives. But with grants from programs like NORD, we can make cheaper, safer drugs. Alexander froze, his heart pounding. Off-label promotion? He had dealt with that very issue on the Apex board. Those closed-door meetings where data was manipulated to boost sales. How did she know? And why was she using old Apex equipment, surplus centrifuges and laptops, for this work? The rain outside seemed to get louder, drowning out the whispers in the room. But Alexander could still hear Sophia as she continued. Remember, data integrity isn't just numbers. It's lives. I lost everything once for blowing the whistle, but here, in this center, we can save ourselves. A long pause as the group of patients nodded, hope lighting their eyes, and Sophia smiled gently to dispel the heaviness. It's like having afternoon tea in Seattle. You need patience, and sometimes a bit of sweetness from the community makes all the difference. Soft laughter echoed, Ethan laughing the loudest, and Alexander felt the corner of his mouth twitch. The subtle humor reminded him of tense meetings at Apex, where he once joked with the team to relieve pressure. He stepped back, shoes squeaking on the wet floor, but it was too late. Sophia turned, her eyes scanning the crack in the door as if sensing a presence. Alexander quickly melted into the shadows, his heart racing as he dashed out into the rain. On the way home, he called his assistant. Investigate Sophia Grant's records immediately. Dig deeper into her professional past. That night, in the luxury villa in Seattle's wealthiest district, Alexander sat before his computer screen, rain pounding the glass like his heartbeat. The file appeared. Sophia was once a top scientist at PharmaCorp, the company Apex partly acquired. She was fired 5 years ago for reporting off-label promotion, marketing drugs for unapproved uses, leading to data integrity errors that harmed rare disease patients. Blacklisted from the pharma industry, she fell into poverty, working as a janitor to support her son with a rare disease. Alexander gripped his whiskey glass, hands trembling. She wasn't a thief, but a victim of the very system he now led. The next morning at Apex's office, Alexander watched Sophia through a one-way mirror as she cleaned the auditorium floor. She moved carefully, deftly arranging projector cables, not the way of a typical janitor, but like someone familiar with lab equipment. He called her into his office, his voice cold. "Sophia, any issues with the night shift?" She looked up, her eyes calm but wary. "No, sir, everything is fine." A long silence followed. Alexander, noticing her breathing was heavier, her hand clutching the rag tightly. He didn't confront her directly, but his suspicion was now mixed with curiosity and a bit of guilt. That afternoon, Alexander decided to investigate further, parking near the community center. Through the window, he saw Sophia tending to Ethan after class. The boy hugged his mother. "Mom, I don't hurt anymore with the new medicine." Sophia stroked his hair, whispering, "I won't stop, my love, no matter what I have to sacrifice." Alexander stepped back, the sound of rain masking everything, but the secret still called to him. Then, on a stormier night, Alexander witnessed Sophia at the community center, examining a stack of documents she had picked from the Apex office trash. A batch of papers not shredded properly, revealing contamination errors in dosage data. She murmured, "This error, if not fixed, thousands will die." Alexander stood frozen outside the door, heart pounding. But does Sophia know Alexander is watching? And how will her hidden past unravel when the real crisis hits? Alexander clutched the crumpled piece of paper from the trash, the faded print still visible under the Seattle streetlights. Contamination risk in dosage data. Potential fatality if not addressed. His heart pounded as he rushed into his sedan, rain lashing the windshield as if trying to wash away that dark truth. Late at night, in a luxurious mansion, he spread out the documents on the glossy wooden table, his heavy breaths mingling with the damp oak aroma drifting in from the rain-soaked window. The papers Sophia had collected, not stolen but salvaged from careless waste, revealed more about off-label promotion errors from PharmaCorp, where she had once led a team that helped save hundreds of lysosomal storage patients with cheap generics. But a new detail froze him. Sophia was not just a whistleblower. She also provided proof of manipulated data integrity, which led to an internal lawsuit costing PharmaCorp millions of dollars and her own permanent blacklisting, forcing her to hide her talents beneath janitor's coveralls. His hand trembled as he turned the page, feeling the rough paper beneath his fingers, like touching the buried pain of a scientist once hailed at major pharmaceutical conferences, now quietly sweeping floors to care for her son with a rare disease. The next morning, Alexander decided to follow up, parking his sedan a short distance from the community center, sheltering behind a row of wet trees. Through the fogged window, he saw Sophia take care of Ethan after class, the boy sitting on an old wooden bench, his thin body trembling slightly from a passing pain. "Mom, I'm tired today," Ethan whispered, his young voice trembling as he clutched a medicine vial. Sophia knelt, rubbing his back, her own breath growing heavier as she checked his dosage, fingers deftly adjusting the dropper under the flickering neon light. "I know, sweetie, but this generic medicine will help. I've checked the Nord grants data thoroughly." An extended silence lingered as she hugged him, her eyes shimmering with silent anxiety, and Alexander felt a surge of internal conflict swell in his chest. He remembered Mia, his 12-year-old daughter, and the endless lonely nights when he drowned himself in Apex work and paid for the best doctors without ever being present. Sophia was different. She had only her hands and her buried knowledge, fighting for her son with a rare disease, like so many other patients there. "Have I been wrong?" he whispered, gripping the steering wheel, for the first time doubting the very system he led, a system that had pushed people like her into the shadows. That afternoon at Apex, Alexander observed Sophia through a one-way mirror as she cleaned the hallway floor. She moved carefully, skillfully sweeping up dirt near the trash can, the place where discarded paperwork was often tossed without being properly shredded. Suddenly, to lift the heavy silence with her fellow janitor, Sophia joked lightly, "Cleaning the floor is like checking data. Leave a single speck of dust, and the whole room's a mess." Her co-worker chuckled, the laughter echoing through the empty corridor, making Alexander smile in spite of himself. The subtle humor reminded him of tense meetings where he had once used jokes to ease the team's stress. But now, it made him wonder about her life. A life blacklisted only for speaking up. Yet suspicion still haunted him, mingled with guilt. Late that night, Alexander returned to the community center, pressing himself to a moldy wall, the patter of rain masking his breath. Through a crack in the door, he saw Sophia alone after the patient group had dispersed, reviewing more papers from her bag, discarded trial printouts revealing an impending contamination risk at Apex. She murmured, "This dosage error. They're repeating old mistakes, and Ethan will be the next victim if it doesn't stop." Alexander felt a chill seep through his coat, his hand shaking as he touched the wall, and for the first time wondered, am I part of the system that drove her into darkness, forcing her to sift through trash to save her child? Then, on a day of even heavier rain, Alexander witnessed Sophia using old equipment at the center to analyze a discarded vial from Apex, a surplus test sample improperly destroyed, and the results on her aging laptop screen revealed new evidence. Data manipulated to hide fatality risks. She tightened her grip on the vial, eyes shining with resolve, whispering, "I have to stop them before it's too late." Alexander's internal conflict exploded more fiercely than ever. As he realized he could no longer stand by, Alexander gripped his phone tightly, the screen still glowing with Sophia's past file. Cold lines recounting blacklists and sacrifices, making him unable to sleep that night. Early in the morning, he walked into Apex Pharmaceuticals in his usual suit, but his mind was as chaotic as the Seattle rain pattering against the office window. The soft sound of leather shoes echoed on the marble floor as he strode down the hallway, his eyes glancing at Sophia cleaning her desk near the trash can, the spot where she often collected secret pieces. He stopped, his voice cold but masking inner turmoil. "Sophia, was there anything unusual during your shift last night? You seem to stay late often." She looked up, her eyes calm but her hand unconsciously tightened around the cleaning cloth, her breath heavier as she replied, "No, sir, I just cleaned more thoroughly. Dirt here is like data errors. If it accumulates, it can be harmful." Alexander nodded, but her indirect retort made him sense the extended silence between the two, like the heavy air before a storm. She avoided his gaze, returning to her work, while he walked away with mixed suspicions and guilt. She wasn't the enemy, but how did she know so much? That afternoon, Alexander decided to dig deeper, parking his sedan farther from the Rainier Valley Center to avoid being discovered. He slipped in through the back door, the creak of wooden floors under his feet, the chill from concrete walls seeping through his jacket as he hid behind an old bookcase. Peeking through a crack, he saw Sophia setting up a makeshift laboratory, using old equipment from Apex, centrifuges and extra test tubes that had been discarded with approval, not stolen but cleverly repurposed from the company's trash. A group of patients gathered, mostly immigrants with weary faces, and Sophia began instructing. "Today, we continue researching cheap generics for rare diseases, testing dosages to avoid contamination." An elderly patient, with pale skin and a trembling voice, asked, "Miss, how can we compete with the big companies? They have perfect data integrity." Sophia paused, her breath heavier, her hand gripping a test tube as if to suppress a rising anger. "Not exactly," she replied firmly. "I've seen them cover up errors, off-label promotion that patients pay for. But with grants from programs like NORD, we can make safer, cheaper versions." Alexander felt his heart pounding, his hand trembling as he touched the bookcase, the old papers on the shelf whispering secrets. He watched Sophia move smoothly among the tables, showing a teenager how to analyze a vial sample. Not stealing, but recycling Apex's surplus to research generic formulas for chronic diseases like lysosomal storage. Ethan sat nearby, a frail 10-year-old, carefully dosing medicine under his mother's supervision, his young voice asking, "Mom, is this dose okay?" Sophia smoothed his hair, a brief silence lingering as she checked, hope and worry mingling in her eyes. Trying to break the heavy atmosphere after a patient spoke of huge medical bills, Sophia smiled and joked with the group. "This research is like cracking the code to Seattle coffee. Gotta be precise to avoid bitterness, but a bit of sweetness from community can work wonders." Everyone chuckled, laughter echoing through the cramped room, and Alexander unconsciously felt himself soften. That subtle humor reminded him of meetings at Apex, where he too would use a joke to lift the team's spirits. Now, it made him wonder about her hidden strength. Then Sophia's voice rang out more clearly as she told the group, "These hidden old formula data, if they get out, they could save thousands of lives, but they won't let that happen." Alexander froze, his breath heavier than ever, his hand gripping the bookcase to suppress his shock. Hidden old formulas. That was the rare disease project he was leading at Apex, with internal questions about data integrity. How did she know, and why risk researching cheap generics here, using surplus equipment from his own company? He stepped back, the floor creaking beneath him, his mind spinning with conflict. Doubt or trust? enemy or ally. Late that night, Alexander returned to the center once more, hiding behind a damp wall, the sound of rain masking his breath. Through a gap in the door, he saw Sophia checking vial samples with outdated equipment, her old laptop screen blinking results. Contamination detected in dosage. She muttered, "Apex. They're repeating old mistakes." Alexander's internal struggle peaked as he realized this secret not only threatened the company but his conscience as well. Alexander gripped the cold cup of coffee tightly in his hand, the last bit of warmth seeping through his fingers as if trying to chase away the chill brought by the bad news he'd just received. His phone vibrated relentlessly on the gleaming wooden desk in the Apex Pharmaceuticals office, the sound of Seattle's rain still drumming against the window like a warning of disaster. Contamination in the new drug batch. The CFO's voice blared through the speakerphone, full of panic. Data integrity has been compromised. Incorrect dosing could occur, leading to fatalities for patients with rare diseases. If this gets out, we are certain to go bankrupt. Alexander stood up, his trembling hand setting down the cup, feeling the icy tabletop beneath his palm, his mind reeling with images of patients like Ethan, Sophia's son, whose frail body suffered from lysosomal storage. This breakthrough batch, the project he'd staked everything on, had become a ticking time bomb. Contamination from data errors that could kill thousands and destroy his millionaire empire. He called an emergency meeting with all the leaders, the sound of chairs scraping echoing in the vast conference room, the atmosphere heavy like the calm before a storm. "We have 48 hours before the FDA inspection," Alexander said, his voice steady but breathing heavier as he ran through the data on the big screen, the blinking numbers like harbingers of doom. The technical team argued heatedly, fingers jabbing at contamination charts, sweat beading on foreheads beneath glaring neon lights. Was the data integrity hacked internally, or was it a system error? One engineer asked, his voice shaky, and Alexander gripped his pencil tightly, remembering the security footage. Sophia pausing in front of an abandoned laptop, eyes fixed on the data, not stealing but as if searching for errors. The kind of errors now pushing Apex to the brink. He recalled the scraps of paper she gathered from trash bins, the rejected vials she analyzed at the center, and the results on the old laptop. Contamination detected. Could she be the key? The inner turmoil surged, but he had no choice. Bankruptcy meant total loss, from his luxury villa to Mia's future. Alexander left the meeting room, striding quickly down the corridor, the faint sound of leather shoes clicking on the marble floor. He summoned Sophia to his private office, his voice cold but masking desperation. "Sophia, I need to talk. About data integrity." She entered, her light blue uniform still spotless, but her hands unconsciously clutched a cleaning cloth, her breath heavier as she sat down across from him. "Sir, I'm just a janitor," she replied calmly, but her eyes glimmered with alertness, a brief silence hanging as he placed the documents she'd gathered from the trash on the table, the pieces she had collected. "You know more than that," he said, his heart pounding. "And right now, Apex is in crisis. A contamination caused by data failure, one that could kill. You once blew the whistle on off-label promotion at PharmaCorp. I need your help." Sophia paused, her breathing heavier than ever, her trembling hand touching the cold wooden table, as if wrestling between a buried past and a chance to save lives. Trying to lighten the tension after his confession, Alexander attempted a joke. "You're better at cleaning data dirt than I thought. Now help me clean up this mess." Sophia flashed a faint smile, her small chuckle slightly easing the heavy atmosphere, but her eyes remained resolute. She nodded, and Alexander brought her into the emergency meeting room, where the leaders were still arguing. The murmurs died instantly as the door opened, everyone stunned to see the janitor step in next to the CEO. Sophia clutched the stack of documents tightly, her eyes shimmering with determination as she began analyzing the data on the big screen. And Alexander knew that this decision would change everything. Sophia clutched the stack of documents in her hand, her eyes sparkling with determination as she stepped toward the large screen in the Apex Pharmaceuticals conference room, her nimble fingers gliding across the keyboard under the harsh neon lights. The whispers of the executives fell silent, the atmosphere heavy like the calm before a storm, with only the sound of Seattle rain drumming on the frosted glass windows. "This is a contamination error, resulting from manipulated data integrity," she said, her voice steady but her breathing heavier as she zoomed in on the dosing chart, the blinking numbers like a deadly warning. Alexander stood nearby, his hand gripping the chair tightly, feeling the cold surface under his palm, his heart pounding as she pinpointed the mistakes he had overlooked during the internal meeting. Drawing from her whistleblowing experience on off-label promotion at Pharmacorp, Sophia quickly identified the error. The dosing data was altered to conceal fatality risks, leading to incorrect dosing in patients with rare diseases like lysosomal storage. "We need to revalidate everything using the old generic formula I once invented. It will fix the contamination without delaying the launch." The board of directors responded fiercely, the scraping and shoving of chairs echoing, the CFO shaking his head. "A janitor? Who do you think you are?" Sophia paused, her breathing heavier, her trembling hand touching the glossy wooden conference table. But her eyes remained determined, as if cradling past buried pain. Alexander intervened, his voice cold but full of support. She was once a leading scientist, blacklisted for daring to blow the whistle on a similar error. "We need to listen to her before we lose everything." The room fell into a prolonged silence, with only the rain drowning out their chaotic heartbeats. And finally, they agreed. They worked through the night, the Apex office turning into a battlefield strewn with papers, the smell of cold coffee mixed with the sterile scent from vial samples. Alexander and Sophia sat side by side in front of the screen, his hand deftly taking notes while she analyzed the data with astonishing speed, her fingers moving swiftly like a true scientist. In the dead of night, as the team grew weary, Alexander and Sophia opened up, sharing fragments of their lives, like the mighty Columbia River carrying both pain and hope. He spoke of losing his wife in a car accident, leaving him alone with Mia, his 12-year-old daughter who now only saw him through video calls, his voice choking. "I built Apex to save lives, but sometimes I forget to save myself. Forget that love is the true medicine." Sophia paused, her trembling hand gripping the mouse, feeling the cold metal beneath her palm, and with tears streaming down her face, she shared, "My husband died of a terminal illness. Off-label promotion led him to take the wrong medication, and I blew the whistle to save others, but lost everything. Now I only have Ethan, and every night I fear losing my son as I lost my husband." A long silence settled between them, the sound of rain outside seeming to whisper in sympathy, and they both realized their shared loneliness. The millionaire CEO with a vast empire, and the janitor with buried knowledge, both fighting for their children, their hearts slowly growing closer through shared tears and sincere whispers. To shake off fatigue after hours of data analysis, Alexander smiled and joked with her. "You analyze these mistakes the way you clean floors, spotless and relentless." Sophia giggled, her laughter ringing softly in the empty room, dissipating some of the tension, and they continued on, her old generic formula gradually fixing the contamination error. Alexander felt a warmth from their unexpected partnership, his hand accidentally brushing hers as he pointed at the screen, a fleeting moment of contact that startled them both. But then, as the data became clearer, Sophia whispered, "I do all this for my son. Ethan has a rare disease, and that's what keeps me going." Sophia squeezed the sample vial in her hand, her eyes shimmering with pain mixed with determination as she revealed her true motivation. Ethan, her son, was battling a rare lysosomal storage disease, a condition that left the boy gaunt and made long, painful nights a constant. Alexander froze in place, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest, his heavy breathing blending with the scent of cold coffee and disinfectant lingering from the Apex Pharmaceuticals meeting room. "Ethan." "The boy at the center," he whispered, his voice choked, hand trembling as he touched the polished wooden table, feeling the cold surface beneath his palm as a reminder of the loneliness he once shared with Mia. A long silence settled between them, only broken by the tapping of Seattle rain against the misted glass windows, like the unshed tears of two people relentlessly tested by life. Sophia nodded, her voice low but resolute. "Every dose I research is for my son, and for kids like your daughter. We have to fix this mistake, not just for Apex, but for them." Alexander felt a storm of conflict surge within him. The millionaire CEO with his massive empire suddenly feeling small in the face of a mother's strength. And he nodded, his eyes shining with hope for the first time after a long night of crisis. They flung themselves into work with renewed energy. The meeting room transformed into an emotional and technical battlefield. Paperwork scattered like autumn leaves under the rain, the laptop screen flashing with contamination data under Sophia's skilled fingers. She analyzed every line of manipulated data integrity, her voice cutting through the team's anxious whispers. "Here. The dosage was altered to hide the fertility risk. My old generic formula will neutralize the contamination without changing the drug's effectiveness." Alexander stood by, gripping his pencil, feeling the smooth wood beneath his fingers like comfort, his breathing rougher as he watched her. The woman once blacklisted, now saving his empire. At first, the board of directors was skeptical, their arguments echoing like thunder. But as Sophia demonstrated through computer simulations, the data clarified, the incorrect dosing error vanishing like mist in the morning sun. "It works," an engineer whispered, eyes wide with astonishment, and the meeting room erupted in applause, chairs scraping and shuffling in the cramped space. With Sophia's solution, the old generic formula cleverly adjusted to fix the contamination without delaying progress, Apex rescued the batch in time. The next morning, the product launch was a resounding success. Shares soared by 15% on the exchange, the bell ringing out like a victory anthem on the office TV screens. Alexander stood at the window, looking out at Seattle after the rain had stopped, his breathing lighter than ever, gripping his phone as he answered congratulatory calls from the board. But he knew this success wasn't his alone. It belonged to Sophia, the woman whose hands once mopped floors and now had wiped away the dirt in the data to save the company. He called an all-company meeting, the grand hall packed with employees from executives to janitors, whispers like a breeze passing through the rows of seats. Alexander stepped onto the stage, his voice echoing through the microphone. Apex just averted a disaster. Contamination that could have killed thousands of rare disease patients. But we didn't just save the company. We saved lives thanks to one person. He gestured toward Sophia, standing humbly at the back in her pale blue uniform. And everyone turned, their whispers falling silent. She stepped up, her breathing heavy under the harsh stage lights, hand trembling as she gripped the cold microphone, her eyes shining with emotion as he acknowledged, "Sophia Grant is no janitor. She's a brilliant scientist who was blacklisted for blowing the whistle on off-label promotion. Her solution saved us, and I'm offering her a top position on our research team. Effective immediately." The hall erupted in cheers, the seats rattling with excitement, and Alexander felt a warmth rise within him, like sunlight piercing through Seattle's rainy clouds. Sophia paused, a brief silence stretching as she looked around the hall, breathing heavier than ever, clutching the mic as if to hold back tears. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice firm but emotional. "But I have to decline. I'm more used to mopping floors than meetings. Less drama that way." Laughter erupted, echoing as if to blow away the formality, and Alexander found himself laughing too, her subtle humor reminding him of the moments they shared the previous night, when her jokes hid her pain. She continued, "I choose to keep working at the community center, where I can save others like my son, Ethan, with Nord grants and affordable generic medicines. That's my real mission." The hall fell silent, then erupted in even louder applause, and Alexander felt a surge of pride, his eyes shining as he looked at her, the woman who had changed not just Apex, but his heart as well. But then, amid the applause, Alexander stepped closer to her, softly saying, "In that case, Apex will partner with the center, funding research, launching free medical programs for rare diseases." Alexander gripped Sophia's hand, his eyes filled with hope as he proposed the collaboration, making her freeze at the realization that this journey was only just beginning. Alexander gripped the sedan's steering wheel tightly, his heart pounding like a drum as he parked in front of Rainier Valley Center. The Seattle rain had stopped, but the air remained damp, carrying the scent of fresh earth as a reminder of change. Just a few weeks after Sophia declined the high position at Apex, his company had officially partnered with the community center. A decision born not only out of business sense but from a heart profoundly moved. He entered the old building, floorboards creaking beneath his feet, his heavy breaths mixing with the smell of medical disinfectant and cheap coffee. Yet now, the space felt less cramped and more expansive, thanks to support from Apex. New lab equipment, upgraded classrooms, and a free medical program for rare diseases officially launched. Apex employees volunteered en masse, from engineers to clerks, transforming the center into a lively place echoing with laughter and the quiet hum of centrifuges. Former patients, like the teenage boy who once asked Sophia about data integrity, had now become assistants, guiding newcomers with hopeful, sparkling eyes, skillfully adjusting test tubes beneath neon lights brighter than ever. Alexander visited the center regularly, not in a leader's suit, but in casual shirts, his hand trembling as he touched the newly installed glass door, watching from a distance. One drizzly afternoon he saw Mia, his 12-year-old daughter, attending a class, sitting beside Ethan, the once frail boy now beaming thanks to a stable dose of generic medicine. "Dad, today I learned how to check dosages," Mia exclaimed when she saw him, her young voice brimming with excitement. Alexander knelt and hugged her, breathing heavily as he felt her tiny frame, his heart melting like fog in the sunlight. Deep emotions welled up. He, a millionaire CEO once lonely in a luxurious villa, now found warmth in this community, in the smiles of immigrant patients saved by the program, in the whispered thanks of grateful parents. "I used to think success was rising stock prices," he murmured to himself, clutching the old wooden railing. "But now, it's moments like these. Overcoming loneliness with people like Sophia." Sophia moved smoothly between lab tables, deftly guiding Apex volunteers on how to analyze vial samples, her voice warm yet resolute. "Remember, every generic medicine is a second chance for rare disease patients like Ethan and Mia." Alexander watched her from afar, heart thumping as he saw her laugh with Mia, gently stroking his daughter's hair as if she were her own. A quiet moment stretched as he realized the closeness forming between them. More and more Apex employees volunteered, turning the program into a wide-reaching network. Former patients, like the middle-aged woman who once took trembling notes, now became chief assistants, sharing stories of overcoming contamination thanks to fixed data integrity. "Thank you, Apex," one patient whispered to Alexander, clutching a new vial, tears sparkling in her eyes. He felt a warmth spreading, dispelling the loneliness that had gnawed at him since his wife's passing. To lighten the mood after a long class, Sophia gently joked with the children. "Research is just like playing games in Seattle. You have to be patient to win." but the reward is health. Laughter rang out, Ethan and Mia laughing the loudest, their innocent giggles blending into a hopeful melody. Alexander couldn't help but smile. That subtle humor reminded him of late nights at the office, when she would joke to keep the team's spirit up. He walked over, whispering to Sophia, "You've changed everything. Not just the center, but me too." She paused, her breath heavy, her trembling hand touching the cold lab bench, eyes shining with emotion as she looked at him. The silence between them lengthened, like an unspoken promise of greater closeness. But then, as the program grew, Alexander saw Mia and Ethan spending more time together. The once frail boy now ran and played with his daughter, and he realized a family-like bond was forming. Sophia and Alexander became closer through their children, surprising family dinners and whispered confidences, stirring Alexander's heart for the first time after years of loneliness. Alexander tightened his grip on the hand of his 12-year-old daughter, Mia, as they entered the Rainier Valley Center under Seattle's drizzly rain. The sound of raindrops drumming on the tin roof like a gentle soundtrack for moments of surprise. Just a few months after the expansion of the free health program, Ethan and Mia had become close friends. The once skinny boy now healthier thanks to a steady supply of generic medication, and his daughter, her bright eyes sparkling, finding joy in vial analysis lessons with her new friend. "Dad, today Ethan taught me how to check dosage data," Mia exclaimed, her youthful voice full of excitement as she pulled him into the makeshift lab, now brighter thanks to new lights funded by Apex. Alexander smiled, his heart beating gently, his breath a bit heavier as he watched Sophia from afar. She was instructing a group of patients, her pale blue uniform blended with a lab apron, skillfully adjusting test tubes under the warm neon light. Sophia looked up, her eyes sparkling with surprise when she saw them, her hand trembling as she touched the old wooden table, as if to contain the surge of emotion. "Mia, Ethan is waiting for you," she said warmly, her breath a bit heavier as she turned to Alexander. "And Mr. Hayes, visiting again?" He nodded, his voice a whisper. "Not just visiting. I want to see how the program we built is changing everything." A brief silence stretched between them, children's laughter echoing from afar like a gentle reminder of connections forming. And Alexander felt a warmth radiating from her gaze. The once cold millionaire CEO now felt his heart stir at that gentle smile. Ethan ran up and pulled Mia away to play, beaming, "Mia, let's try making a new medicine today." The two kids disappeared around the corner, leaving Alexander and Sophia side by side, the air sweet as honey, blending with the scent of medical disinfectant. Their meetings became more frequent, not just at the center, but spilling over into unexpected family dinners. Like that evening when Sophia invited them over to her tiny apartment in a poor Seattle neighborhood, the smell of home-cooked food wafting from the cramped kitchen. Alexander walked in, a hastily bought bouquet of fresh flowers in hand, his heart pounding as he watched her busy over the soup pot, her apron dusted with flour. "I'm not much of a cook," she laughed shyly, her voice a soft whisper, her hands trembling as she stirred the pot, heat from the stove making her cheeks flush. Ethan and Mia sat at the table, giggling over a game of guessing medicine formulas, joyful laughter ringing like a hopeful melody. Alexander helped her set the table, his hand lightly brushing hers as he passed a plate. A brief moment of contact that startled them both, his breathing heavier as he gazed deep into her eyes that sparkled with both shyness and warmth. "You cook like you research, with such dedication," he whispered. And Sophia smiled gently. "But sometimes, things get burned. Like the first time I tried to mix medicine for Ethan." Dinner was cozy, the soft clink of spoons and plates filling the small room, the aroma of chicken soup mingling with the vanilla scent of homemade cake. They shared their hopes, moving beyond their pasts. Alexander spoke of long, lonely nights after his wife's death, his voice choking, I used to think money could save everything, but Mia needs love. And moments like this. Sophia listened, her hands tightening around her glass, her breath heavier as she shared. Blacklist took away my career but gave me Ethan. And now this program to save children like ours. A silence lingered, their eyes meeting under warm yellow light. And Alexander felt a surge of emotion, as sweet as a yet unshared first kiss, his heart melting at her gentle strength. Ethan and Mia played in the living room, their laughter echoing like a promise of the future. And the meal ended with homemade cake. Sophia sliced it, her hands trembling with nervousness, laughing. It's a little burned, like the time I tried baking for Ethan. It turned to stone. Alexander burst out with warm laughter, the gentle humor breaking down all barriers, reminding him that stressful board meetings were now just distant memories. And then, in the warmth of that dinner, an unexpected moment of emotion arrived. A former patient from the center knocked on the door, holding a fresh bouquet, voice trembling. "Ms. Sophia, your generic medicine saved my life. The contamination in the expensive drugs nearly killed me. But your dose, I survived." Sophia froze, tears shimmering in her eyes as she hugged the patient, clutching the bouquet tightly. And Alexander felt a wave of emotion, realizing her true power, not just saving Apex, but real lives. The patient spoke in detail, words of gratitude echoing in the cozy room, and the dinner turned sacred, sweeter than ever before. Late that evening, when taking Mia home, Alexander returned to lightly hug Sophia at the door, his breath deeper as he touched her shoulder, her hair fragrance blending with the damp night air. "Thank you for everything," he whispered, eyes shining under the streetlight, and she smiled softly. "For our children. And maybe for us." A long silence stretched, their hearts beating in sync, and Alexander left with a surge of feeling, as sweet as honey in the Seattle rain. But then, the next morning, an email arrived from Apex's board. "The community program is too costly. We should cut back." Alexander gripped his phone tightly, his eyes flashing with anger. The Apex board opposed the program, forcing Alexander to fight to protect their shared dream. Alexander gripped his phone tightly, the screen still aglow with an email from the Apex Pharmaceuticals board, words cold and sharp as a blade. "The community program is too costly, yielding no short-term profit. We should cut it immediately to focus on our core project." His heart pounded like a drum in his chest, his heavy breath mingling with the stale scent of coffee left over from the morning rush at the office. He stood before the large glass window, looking out at Seattle beneath a relentless drizzle, the sound of raindrops drumming on the awning, a whispered warning of the coming storm. The millionaire CEO, who once led Apex with an iron fist, now felt a surge of inner turmoil. The free healthcare program for rare diseases was not just corporate social responsibility, but the very heart of the change he and Sophia had built together. He recalled sweet moments at family dinners, Mia and Ethan's laughter echoing, Sophia's gentle smile as she brushed hair from his daughter's face. And now, all of that was threatened by soulless numbers on a balance sheet. He immediately called Sophia, his voice low but full of determination over the speaker. "They want to cut the funding. They say, no profit. We have to fight back." On the other end, Sophia paused at the community center, her hand trembling as it touched the old, rough wooden lab bench, a reminder of their arduous journey. Her breath grew heavier, her eyes shining with an angry worry at the thought of Ethan. Her son, now stronger thanks to the generic medicine from the program, and the hundreds of other patients still waiting. "They're always like that. Money over lives," she whispered, her voice firm yet emotional. "But we have data from the Nord grants, from real results at the center. I'll support you. For our children. For everyone." Alexander felt warmth surge from her words, like sunlight piercing through storm clouds, and he nodded, even though she couldn't see. Together we will win. The board meeting was tense, the vast Apex conference room packed with stern-faced executives, the soft rustle of papers like conspiratorial whispers. Alexander stood first, his voice echoing through the mic. The community program isn't a cost. It's a long-term investment in future talent from the rare disease patients we save. He presented the data, charts flickering on the big screen. The number of patients saved by low-cost generic medicine had risen 300%. Grants from programs like NORD were bringing in new collaborations, and Apex stock remained stable, thanks to its social responsibility image. But the CFO shook his head, pointing to the figures. Short-term profit dropped 5%. We can't keep funding charity forever. The atmosphere grew heavy, like the stillness before a storm. Chairs scraped and clattered as the arguments flared up, and Alexander felt sweat bead on his brow, his hand gripping his pencil until his knuckles whitened, his breath heavier than ever as he thought of Sophia, the woman who'd saved his company from contamination. Now seeing their dream threatened once again, Sophia joined via video call from the center. Her image projected large on screen, lab apron on, eyes sparkling with resolve beneath the neon lights. I was once blacklisted for exposing off-label promotion, she said, voice steady yet emotional. And this program literally saves lives. Here's data from NORD grants. 150 lysosomal storage patients treated for free, a 40% fatality reduction. Cutting it would kill hope. The board fell silent, the soft buzz of whispers drifting like a breeze, and Alexander added, "This isn't just ethical. It brings future talent. Today's patients are tomorrow's engineers for Apex." The debate raged on, the click-clack of keyboards as they checked data, the tension tight as a wire, and Alexander felt the turmoil surge. Once a millionaire CEO prioritizing profit, now fighting for human values. For Sophia, for the children, for a conscience awakened. To lighten the mood in the meeting, Alexander joked with the board. "We almost went bankrupt over contamination. Cutting this program now would be like mopping the floor with our feet." Laughter rippled through the room, easing some of the tension, and Sophia smiled on the screen, her eyes bright. That subtle wit reminded her of late nights beside him, where laughter became their emotional bridge. They continued, Sophia backing him with real-world data from the center. Charts of patients saved, personal stories like that of the middle-aged woman who once trembled as she took notes, now healthy thanks to generic medicine. "This is long-term profit, reputation, loyalty, talent from the community," she said, her voice gently persuasive, hand gripping a sample vial as a reminder of real lives at stake. At last, after hours of debate, the board agreed. The program would stay, even expand, with a 20% budget increase. Alexander hung up, his breath lighter than ever, his hand trembling as he lifted his glass, feeling the cool water slide down his throat. A quiet celebration. He called Sophia right away, his voice ringing out. "We won. Thanks to you." On the other end, she squeezed her phone tightly, tears of joy sparkling in her eyes, breath heavy as she thought of Ethan. "No, thanks to us, and to children like Mia and Ethan." They laughed, the sound echoing across the line, sweet as honey, and Alexander felt that familiar surge of emotion, closer than ever before. Seattle's sunlight filtered through thick clouds, casting a rare golden glow down on Rainier Valley Center, transforming the modest building into a beacon of hope amidst the lingering mist from last night's rain. Alexander Hayes stood before the entrance, his heart pounding like a drum echoing within his chest, each beat a reminder of the anticipation he'd built up over the past months. At 45, the millionaire CEO of Apex Pharmaceuticals had always been a man of precision and control. His life was a succession of risks meticulously calculated in boardrooms and labs. But today, as he adjusted his tie with trembling fingers, he felt like the main character in a romance novel he once snuck reads from on lonely nights. Vulnerable, exposed, and utterly smitten, the fresh air, carrying the scent of wet earth and freshly brewed coffee from nearby stalls preparing for the ceremony, filled his lungs. Guests began gathering, former patients with radiant faces thanks to recovered health, volunteers in their new Apex uniforms, and representatives from programs like NORD with satisfied smiles. Yet Alexander's eyes sought out only one person: Sophia Grant, the woman who had breezed into his life, clearing away the fog of lonely years like a cool wind. She stood there, near the newly covered plaque inscribed Sophia Grant Rare Disease Lab, her simple white coat and light dress fluttering softly in the wind, making her look like an angel in the dappled sunlight. At age 38, Sophia bore the past's scars like hidden wounds. A blacklist had stolen her brilliant scientific career. Long nights spent cleaning buildings to support Ethan, her 10-year-old son battling lysosomal storage disease. But in Alexander's eyes, she was the epitome of resilience and grace, her black hair framing a radiant face brightened by a sincere smile. As she adjusted Ethan's collar, her hands steady despite the surging emotions, Sophia felt a mixture of anxiety and joy bubbling within her. The center's grand opening, now upgraded thanks to Apex's funding, was a dream come true. A place where affordable generic drugs for rare diseases could save thousands like her son. But more profoundly, her heart fluttered for Alexander, a man whose warm smile and sparkling eyes met hers, his whispered words sharing the pain of loss. She recalled their family dinners, the way his hand lightly touched hers in the kitchen, heat radiating so her cheeks turned pink, and she realized, he's not just a CEO, he's the man who makes me feel safe after so many lonely years. The ceremony began, gentle melodies from the ceremonial library carrying across the crowd, the music soft, yet enough to touch everyone's heart. A perfect soundtrack for their blossoming love story. Alexander took the stage first, his voice resonating through the microphone, strong but eyes focused only on Sophia, conveying words unspoken. Today, we aren't just opening a lab, we are inaugurating hope for thousands battling rare diseases. This is the Sophia Grant Rare Disease Lab, named after the woman who not only saved Apex from disaster, but reminds us that real innovation comes from the heart. Applause thundered, resounding like drums, and Sophia's cheeks flushed, her hand pressing to her chest to steady her racing heartbeat. Ethan and Mia stood nearby, their small hands clasped, their laughter symbolizing the bridge between two worlds. A CEO's daughter and a janitor's son, now inseparable. As Alexander stepped down, he reached out for Sophia, pulling her up with a gentle strength that made her heart flutter. The plaque was unveiled, gleaming in the sunlight, and the applause rose even higher. Sophia approached, her fingers tracing the engraved letters, the metal cool beneath her skin, a tangible proof of her worth after years of being overlooked. I don't know what to say, she whispered into the microphone, her voice trembling with emotion. The crowd fell silent, awaiting her words. This lab is not just about science, it's about second chances, for patients like my Ethan, for families like ours. Her gaze locked with his, and in that moment, the world faded. Only the two of them existed. Two people finding each other in the strangest of circumstances. Two wounded hearts now interwoven in silent love. To break the emotional intensity, Sophia turned to the crowd with a shy smile. I'm more used to giving out medication than receiving awards like this. It feels strange, like being thanked for cleaning up. Laughter rippled through the crowd, waves of mirth chasing away the tears on several faces. Alexander laughed too, his deep, warm laugh echoing, reminding him of those private moments when her wit first broke through his shell. The ceremony continued with remarks from the Nord representative. Over 200 lives touched in just a few months. Mortality rates down 35% thanks to the generic initiative. This is proof of the power of collaboration. Alexander and Sophia exchanged glances, their connection as real and sweet as an invisible thread. After the official program, the celebration grew lively. Simple tables with sandwiches, fresh fruit, and steaming coffee drew people together, conversations flowing like the nearby river. Alexander found Sophia in a quiet corner, away from the crowd, where Ethan and Mia played a make-believe game with toy test tubes, their laughter ringing like a melody of new hope. "You were wonderful on stage," he said, voice low, moving closer until he could catch the subtle scent of jasmine in her hair. She looked up, eyes sparkling in the sun. "It's thanks to you, your support, your belief in me when no one else did." She touched his hand, initiating this time, the warmth spreading up his arm. He clasped her fingers, stroking them gently, the contact making both of them tremble. "Sophia, it's more than that. You changed me. From a man buried in boardrooms to someone seeing the world through your eyes, full of hope and love." Her breath quickened. Sparks fizzed between them, the distant laughter fading away. "Alexander," she murmured, stepping even closer, her hand resting on his chest, feeling the strong beat beneath his shirt. "I didn't think I'd find this again. Someone who understands the pain, the struggle, and still chooses to stay." He lifted her face, his touch gentle, their eyes locked in a gaze that spoke volumes. Their lips met in a kiss. Soft, sweet, hesitant at first, then deeper with the passion of long-yearning souls. The world whirled around them, the kiss a promise for the future, flavored with the sweetness of shared dreams and the depth of mutual healing. When they finally parted, foreheads pressed together, Alexander whispered, "I love you, Sophia, for your strength, your kindness, for making me whole again." Tears shimmered in her eyes, her voice a whisper. "And I love you, Alexander, for seeing me, the real me, beyond the janitor's uniform." They embraced, their bodies warm and entwined, the electric contact comforting and sure. Ethan's voice broke the spell. "Mom, look what Mia and I made. A magic medicine for the lab." The two children raced over holding colorful toy test tubes, their faces shining. Sophia laughed, wiping her tears, and Alexander knelt to ruffle their hair. "Perfect. Just like the family we are building." The children hugged them. That moment a living symbol of hope, with Mia and Ethan playing joyfully, laughter echoing like a blessing for this new love. As the day drew to a close, guests departed with smiles and handshakes, complimenting the lab's promise. Alexander and Sophia walked hand in hand through the center, their fingers intertwined, the touch syncing their heartbeats. "The future looks bright. Expanding programs nationwide, more grants from Nord, saving more lives," he said, his tone full of optimism. She nodded, leaning her head on his shoulder, warmth radiating through her. "And for us? A future. Together. With our children." He paused, turning to her, his eyes shining. "Yes. A marriage. A home where laughter never fades. Where love heals all wounds." She smiled, heart swelling, but a small secret twinkled in her mind. The positive pregnancy test from this morning. A new life symbolizing their love, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal. The sun set over Seattle, casting a warm hue on the lab. And as they watched Mia and Ethan play, Alexander drew her closer, a sunset kiss marking their love story. The path ahead was clear, full of promise, but that little secret added a thrill of joyful suspense to their happiness. The future expands with a nationwide program, but a personal secret adds a new layer of excitement. Sophia clenched the pregnancy test tightly in her hand, the positive sign glimmering under the dim kitchen light of her small apartment in a poor Seattle neighborhood, making her heart pound like a drum in her chest. Just a few weeks after the grand opening of the Sophia Grant Rare Disease Lab, that personal secret, a new life forming, made everything even more thrilling, sweet as honey blended with a gentle anxiety. She set the test down on the old wooden table, her hands trembling as she touched its rough surface, feeling the warm wood under her palm like a comforting caress from her now changed life. Her breath grew heavier, her eyes shimmering with joyful tears as she thought of Alexander, the man who had come into her life like a refreshing breeze, bringing tender love and endless hope. "I have to tell him," she whispered, her voice choked, and a shy smile spread across her lips as she imagined his reaction. Sparkling eyes, a tight embrace, and his sweet whisper, "We're going to have a real family." The free healthcare program expanded across Seattle, then nationwide, like a wave of hope sweeping away the darkness of medical inequality. Thanks to grants from programs like NORD and solid funding from Apex, the Rainier Valley Center had become a model, a modern lab with advanced equipment, a volunteer team of former Apex staff and past patients now serving as assistants, saving thousands of patients with rare diseases like lysosomal storage disorders. Success stories spread. The teenage boy who once nervously asked about data integrity was now a young engineer at Apex. The middle-aged woman, who once took shaky handwritten notes, now led a psychological support group for patients, laughter echoing in the seminar rooms like a victory anthem. Sophia stood at the center, deftly guiding a new class, her voice warm. Every dose of generic medicine is an opportunity, not just to heal illness, but to heal hearts. She felt a surge of pride, her breath lighter as she looked at Ethan, the 10-year-old boy now running and playing joyfully, no longer skinny thanks to a stable dosage, playing with Mia as if they were siblings. From his Apex office, Alexander looked out at the city under a rare ray of sunlight, his heart stirring when he thought of Sophia, the woman who had turned a lonely millionaire CEO into a man who knew how to love. He remembered the sweet moments, their first kiss at sunset after the lab opening, the warmth of her lips spreading like fire thawing his cold heart. Walks hand in hand through Seattle parks, their fingers entwined so he could feel the deep connection, and the nights whispering their dreams. Her sweet voice, "You gave me hope, a future where I'm never lonely again." The expanded program brought long-term profit. Apex's stock price soared thanks to their social reputation. New collaborations with NORD poured in. But for him, true success was the family coming together. Mia calling Sophia Auntie with a radiant smile, Ethan hugging him like a real father, the laughter of children echoing through the now cozy mansion more than ever before. One rare, sunny afternoon in Seattle, Alexander knelt before Sophia at the center, surrounded by patients and volunteers, his hand trembling as he opened a box with a sparkling diamond ring. "Sophia, you saved me from darkness. I love you, and I want to spend my whole life with you, with our children." The crowd fell silent, soft murmurs of emotion breaking out, and Sophia froze, her eyes sparkling with tears as she looked at him. The man who had once been a distant boss now kneeling, his voice choked with love. "Yes, my love," she whispered, her hand squeezing his, her breath heavier as he slid the ring onto her finger, their sweet kiss echoing under the thunderous applause of joy. Ethan and Mia ran over to hug them, the boy shouting, "Now we're a real family." The children's laughter echoed, blending with everyone's happy tears, and Sophia whispered in his ear, "And I have a surprise. We're going to have another little member." Alexander froze, tears in his eyes, holding her tight. "You will be a perfect family." The wedding was simple but warm at the center, the place where their love began, with fresh flowers from patients, homemade cakes from the community kitchen, and soft music from the ceremonial library playing throughout. Sophia entered in a simple white dress, holding a wildflower bouquet, her eyes shining in the sunlight, and Alexander waiting at the makeshift altar, his heart pounding when he saw her. Beautiful as a dream. Their vows echoed. "I promise to love you all my life, through every trial," he said, voice choked, his hand locking hers. "I promise to be by your side, sharing every hope," she replied, tears streaming down her face. Ethan and Mia brought the rings, their laughter echoing as a blessing, and the wedding ended with a heartbreakingly sweet kiss, under the applause of the patients, those whom they had saved, now witnessing their healing love. The program expanded nationwide, saving tens of thousands of lives, with the Sophia Grant Lab becoming a symbol. Data integrity tightly controlled, affordable generic drugs reaching everyone, fatalities dropping to record lows. Alexander and Sophia led together. He gave up part of his CEO role to spend more time with his family. She returned to being a true scientist, no longer overshadowed by a blacklist. They built a new home, a cozy villa with a garden where Mia and Ethan could play, and their soon-to-be-born baby welcomed with unconditional love. In the evenings, they sat by the fireplace, him holding her, whispering, "You are the cure that healed me." She smiled, hand caressing her belly, "And you are my hope." Family laughter echoed, sweet as an endless melody, and they knew, even after so much pain, they had found true happiness, the healing power of love, the strength to overcome the blacklist and crisis, and the big dream of a fairer world for rare disease patients. Alexander and Sophia's story closed, not just with a happy ending, but as a flame igniting faith in love and resilience. The applause of patients thundered. Sophia smiled under the stage lights, her heart light as if freed from every burden. If this journey made you smile, moved, cry, or believe that every challenge can be overcome, please leave your thoughts in the comments. Hit like, share, and subscribe to the True Millionaire Moments channel. You are always our biggest motivation to develop every day. Thank you.